to get us started here, Tommy?
Yeah, well, greetings. Welcome to the latest edition of the Leaksmith Podcast. I'm Tommy. This is the expert, the president of Accent Roofing, Phillip Scribbins. And remember,
He's the expert.
even if you don't know anything about roofing, you're going to want to pay attention because you can easily become, I would say in no more than half a dozen episodes, you can become the most knowledgeable person on roofing no matter where you go, except maybe a roofing convention. So stay tuned. We're going to bring in some things that have nothing to do with roofing, have more to do with customer service, or maybe even just life. It's become our custom already in just our fourth episode. By the way, these podcasts emanate from the lighthouse in the bucolic outskirts of Athens, Georgia. I saw a magazine earlier today that I didn't know Athens is the birthplace of alternative music. So
Who made that claim?
The cover of the magazine. And so
It's got to be true then.
we're hoping that it becomes the birthplace of really substantive, entertaining podcasts, of which the Leaksmith Podcast is one of them. Before we go to our subject matter for today, which is going to be really fun, I have to tell this customer service story. I saw this in real time yesterday, and I just thought it was fascinating. I went to pick up a rental car, not at the airport. It was at a local rental place. And usually I go in there and there's one or two people at the counter and there's one or two people behind the counter, and you are in and out in 2 minutes. I go, and as I'm walking up, it's standing room only, and there's a line out the door. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I go in there and there's one guy, and he's obviously new at the
What
job.
store was this?
Well, I can't say the name, but I will say that it was Hertz on Riverside Parkway in Lawrenceville. So it's a room about maybe 15 feet square, and every seat is taken. There's probably 15 people sitting. There's 10 people in a line, and there's 10 people out the door. And I'm like, my goodness, I have got to return this car today or I'm late. So I have no choice but to wait. It turns out that the whole cause of the bottleneck was one lady at the counter. And her car had gone, the maximum they'll do is 62 days. And she was trying to renew it. And they were saying, you can't renew it. It's been sold. And she says, well, then I'll get another car. And they said, do you have a reservation? It's a young guy. It's an intern. He says, do you have a reservation? She said, no. How do I make a reservation? He said, get online, use your credit card. She says, I don't have a credit card. This goes around and around, and everybody is starting to get to know each other. I mean, we're all watching this. And after a while, it becomes obvious this lady is not leaving without a car or under police escort. And so I'm about ready to place a bet on how this is going down, because she just got belligerent. They told her to call an 800 number, she asked for supervisors. Everybody told her the same thing. Lady, you are not leaving with a car today. And she just would not take no for an answer. So we're really thinking at some point, first of all, the people that are all out at lunch are going to come back. A manager is going to come back and have her hauled away. Well, the manager gets back, and this is the cool part. This is the customer service story. The manager comes back, sizes up the room, and realizes the only way out of this without a spectacle is to let her keep the car. So she said, okay, I'll tell you what, you keep the car till Friday. In the meantime, make a reservation. Handed her back the keys, situation diffused. Everybody was like astonished. And from that point forward, the herd moved really quick. But that one little bottleneck, it just goes to show, in our business, in any business, sometimes you have to make a call to line of scrimmage for the sake of everybody else, because it was really getting ridiculous.
I wonder what happened to whoever bought that car. I wonder what their story was with them, or if that was probably not even true to begin with.
I think it was true. I think these cars age out and they sell them, but man, this lady was going nowhere fast. So anyway, now let's get into.
No, I mean that's a big part of as we call it, client service. And when you're dealing with the general public, you meet all kinds of people, and sometimes you do. You run into somebody that's only going to get it done their way, and that's it. And the difference between, I'd say, a really good contracting company and one that's not so good is the good companies are willing to do what they have to make a client happy, even if it means sometimes you've got to spend a little money when it's not your fault.
You got to eat it a little bit.
Yeah,
now, don't get any ideas. Don't get any ideas if you're going to call us and be the professional victim. But it does go to show, sometimes for the sake of other people that are waiting, people hate to wait. And so you got to take care of things and keep trucking. I just thought it was fascinating to watch in real time. In fact, one of the ladies that was sitting there didn't even work there, and it got so bad, she just stood up and said, I used to work at Hertz. Let me give you some advice. And she started telling people what to do. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, man, there's no number system. It's going to be a mad dash. If this lady ever leaves, how are we going to decide who's next? So that lady took control. She goes, you're next, and then you, and then you. But without that, there could have been fisticuffs with people fighting over their next spot in line. But the rumor was, I waited about an hour, but people told me they'd been there for 3 hours with this one lady standing at the counter.
Yeah, no, I'm shocked the cops didn't haul her off.
Well, they were never called. That's the thing. If they had been called, and after she got her car and left, one of the guys who was really ticked off at her said to me, he goes, I really felt sorry for her.
Yeah.
But she's making her problem everybody's problem. And she was oblivious to it was probably 40 people waiting by the time she left. But anyway, let's get down to a little bit of roofing. We are in a series.
Well, we got to get to our one fun fact for the episode, which do you want to take that one? I can take it. So,
take it.
In the state of Georgia, for door-to-door sales, there is a 5-day cooling off period law, which is good for the salesman to know and the homeowner. Used to be 3 days. They've extended it to 5 days. That means if you buy anything from a door-to-door salesman, you have 5 days to change your mind. And if you sell anything door-to-door, that customer has 5 days to change their mind. So that... with good companies, you don't really need to worry about that. But, you just never know what you run into with people knocking on your door. So
5 days.
5 days.
Yeah. I wonder if that is a response to the high pressure, the one call close industry.
Well, it's not just roofing. I mean, it's...
but anything where it's a lot of pressure.
Vacuums, door to door. I mean, I remember seeing a vacuum presentation that they did at our house on Pepperwood Trail, and that was probably a 2-hour presentation. I'm pretty sure you and Mom bought it too.
I bought it. You better believe it.
And that was, I don't think that was scheduled.
Well,
I think
they were so good. They made me feel like I was going to die. They ran it through this thing that looked like a bong, and then it came out and it was clean air. And and they showed me the data and the medical reports, and it was like, if you don't buy this rainbow, you're killing your family. So I bought it. And I didn't exercise my right of rescission, but they had a little perfume you could put in there that made it smell really good, so it was nice. But anyway, that brings up another thing, though. I heard, and this is, you guys can Google it. I won't name the company, but just think of the largest legal firm in America that you know of, based on the ad you see. I heard, and they do a lot of advertising. He last night was saying, this is so-and-so of such and such a law firm. He says, there are actually law firms that have runners, and they will show up at your hospital and recruit you. And he said, that's a disbarable offense.
Well, we used to call that ambulance chasing.
Ambulance chasing. Well, my point is, roofing has the same version of that, which is knocking on the door. When you think your roof is fine and knocking on the door and offering a free inspection. But what I found interesting was this guy's passion. He is a known billionaire, and he's worked up enough about runners that he is on, and the words that he used were, he said, it's a disbarable offense. These guys are scumbags. These guys are bums. These guys are bottom feeders. All three of those words occurred in his ad. And I thought, man, if a successful firm like that is that concerned about people being... Now, we're not calling door knockers any of those names by any means.
No.
But it just goes to show that if it's a disbarable offense in the legal profession, then at least in the roofing or the contracting or any kind of door-to-door thing, it's probably a good idea to vet a little bit more than people generally do. Don't you think?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing, I don't know if people...
there's riffraff in every trade. There's just like you said, he's got ambulance chasers in law. There's not great roofers that knock on doors and steal your money.
And the interesting thing about...
They make up a small portion of the whole group, but...
Right.
That's the reputation everybody gets.
The interesting thing about door knockers is ultimately they're going to do the roof for what the insurance pays. And reputable roofers essentially do the same thing, except give you a much better roof.
Yeah.
So why not, if somebody knocks on your door, even if they bring a legitimate roofing issue to your attention, why not take a step back? You got your 5-day right of rescission, because those guys that knock on the door are going to want you to sign that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have 5 days, and that piece of paper is not worth the paper it's written on if you.
But I would say, from the roofer's standpoint, because I have been the roofer that has had a customer go what we call sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have that roofer, if you wait past the 5-day mark, or let's say it's only 3 days, and that roofer helps you and meets with the insurance adjuster and goes to great lengths to try to get your roof approved, you have to take that into consideration. Those people they're not in the free inspection business. They are in the roof sales business. So when that happens, I mean, it's a tough business. I'm not going to turn away business just because they had some other guy working with them. But from a homeowner standpoint, that needs to be taken into consideration in that 5-day period. If you're gonna utilize their services to help with your problem, you probably are gonna want to stick with them throughout the entire thing. Make sure you vet them before you get to that point.
It is unfair for one guy to put the money in your hands and then find himself at the starting line in a race with
everybody else.
Because you can always find somebody cheaper. So are you ready for me to throw the first difficult question at you?
Sure.
All right. So we're in our series, the 10 things that you have to ask before signing a roofing contract.
I want to say one thing real quick. So we're not going to go into these, but the first 3 we went over last episode. I'm just going to tell them to you one time. You can go back and listen for the details. Do you have a physical office? And these are questions that you should be asking your roofer if you're looking for someone to replace your roof or to repair your roof. Do you have a physical office, not just a P.O. box? How many years have you been in business under the same name, not years of experience? Are you manufacturer certified? If so, by which manufacturer? And that was what we went over last episode. That brings us to the next 3, which Tommy will act as the homeowner here, and I'll act as the roofer for the first 2.
Now that Phillip has given our listeners their homework and their review, we'll move on to the next one. Okay. So I'm in the role of skeptical homeowner. You're the roofing contractor, and I say, do you have project managers? And if so, how many jobs are they working on at one time?
I'm not going to answer it just like a roofer first. I'm going to say why this question's important.
Okay.
So the reason this question's important, if they were asking me that, I would say, yeah, we're the ones who came up with it in the first place. So, but the reason why it's important is because if you don't have an on-site project manager, there is a very good chance that a crew is going to show up, nobody speaks English, and nobody's on the ground to address any of your questions. And if you've ever watched a roof replacement, it can look like organized chaos. To the untrained eye, you've got material flying off the roof. You've got guys up there on a steep roof, some running around on the ridge with 3 bundles of shingles on their shoulder. It's kind of crazy and overwhelming if you're not used to it every day. So if you have questions or anything happens inside your house, you see something shaking or hear a noise, or you've got a special plant that you don't want to get destroyed. If you do not have an on-site project manager, there's going to be a very real challenge in getting that crew to understand your concerns. So that's the first thing that it addresses, is basically being your liaison as the homeowner between that crew and yourself on the ground. Also, you want to make sure that everything's being done exactly the way it was sold to you. And our project managers have a quality control checklist they go through. They mark off everything that was sold to that customer. They take photos of it and they document it. And then the other thing is variable expenses. You don't want to get a bill at the end of the day. In almost every roof replacement, there's at least one variable expense, and that's usually rotten wood. If there's rotten wood, you get 3 sheets for free, and then anything over that, you get charged $50, $75, $100 per sheet. If you don't have an on-site project manager, there's a very good chance you'll have the salesman show up at the end of the day looking for money, and he'll say, oh, by the way, we replaced 10 sheets of decking in addition to the 3 free, so you owe us an extra $750. You don't have a project manager there to document the work once they tear it off. They take photos of the rotten area. Then they take photos once it's been removed. and then they take photos once the new wood has gone back down. And our project managers don't hit you with a bill at the end of the day. When they notice and see how much rotten wood there is, they're going to call you out and say, hey, Mr. Smith, I just want to show you here, you've got some rotten wood in these areas, and they'll get the drone out and they'll show you on the drone. And that way you kind of know what to expect by the end of the day. Otherwise, you don't have a project manager. There's a very low likelihood of that happening, and you're just going to have to take their word for it.
Yeah. What is the number one thing that people compliment? You say we didn't invent the project manager. We introduced the concept into this industry. What is the number one thing, the number one feedback that homeowners give you about project managers?
Communication. I mean, if you go and look at our online, Google reviews, and they'll tell you the comments or the words that are used the most in the reviews. Mm-hmm. For us, it's supervisor, project manager, and that's because their names come up over and over and over again in 5-star reviews. Communication is awesome. That they're very accommodating as well. Let's say you get your driveway is taken up with material and a dumpster, and you forgot to move your car that morning, and you've got to get out to go to some doctor appointment or something else. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a project manager there, good luck. You better call Uber.
Right.
You've got our project managers there. They will facilitate getting that stuff moved so you can get out. Little things like that.
Or at the end of, like that.
At the end of the day, you've got a little doghouse that you want to have shingled, and it wasn't in the contract, and you didn't think about it until the guys were finishing up. But we've got a couple of extra bundles. You mention it to our project manager, they knock it out for you. Little things like that. They really are willing to go the extra mile. And the reason why we actually came up with this, we're not the first to ever think of project managers. Commercial roofing, they've had project managers forever.
Now let me just jump in here real quick. When we say project managers, that is not a part of the crew. He's not part of the crew.
No.
Okay.
No, our project managers are going to show up. They're going to be in an accent roofing shirt, an accent roofing truck, and they're there just to supervise and make sure that crew does a great job. Now, our crews are really great as well, and most of them have been with us for over 10 years, but there's two different elements there that need to be taken care of. So, but we did not come up with the idea of a project manager. We came up with the idea of a residential roofing project manager that's on one job per day. And the reason we came up with that is, 10 years ago, when I was really thinking about how we're going to scale our business without watering down the Kool-Aid, I said, how are we going to make sure we get the same quality on every job if me or Tommy can't be out at the job site? And the answer was, we need to have a project manager that's trained really well, knows what we want and what we look for, and that they can be picky so that the homeowner doesn't have to be. And that's how we developed the on-site project manager. And now we've got 7 of them. And if you hire us for a roof replacement, you will have one of them dedicated to you the entire day.
If I'm a homeowner who's not in the roofing business, I'm sitting here going, well, Phillip, that's all well and good, but that sounds expensive. How much more am I going to pay for a company that uses dedicated project managers compared to a company that uses, say, a project manager who drives around to 3 different sites?
That brings up a couple good things. So as we started to advertise this, it's in some of our radio ads. We've done YouTube videos on this. Slowly but surely, the competitors have started to try and copy us. So the way they've done that is a couple of things. I've seen a couple of ways of doing that are both pretty clever. One is to call their sales reps project managers. So you don't have sales reps. We have project managers, and they really are the sales reps. Those guys show up at the end of the day looking for a check. They are not there like our project managers.
What do we call our sales reps? Sales reps?
Roofing consultants. Yeah. Roofing consultants.
Just so there's no confusion.
No confusion.
All
Roofing
right.
consultants. Okay, and then the other way is to just hire, one project manager and have them bounce around between 3 or 4 projects, and you just don't get the same experience. So what does it cost? No, there's definitely an extra element of overhead that we incur in order to do this. But we really don't pass that expense on onto the homeowner, and we save that money that we save there. Or that we spend there, we save in other areas by having the project managers. So it really doesn't cost you more. But I will say, a company that has this level of quality is not going to be the cheapest roofer, and you don't want the cheapest roofer for something like your roof replacement.
Well, people hate the word overhead. To the average homeowner, overhead just sounds like fat. So I wanted to make clear that this is not particularly adding to the project cost.
It's not. No.
It's amazing.
No, I mean, it saves us in other areas, so it's a wash. I mean, it does not get passed on to the homeowner at all. Does it have a value? 100% it has a value, but it doesn't have a cost that goes. So you couldn't hire us to replace your roof without a project manager if you wanted to. But if you did, we would not change the price if we didn't have a project manager. It just means the sales rep would have to be there all day.
Hey, I like you guys. I want to do this, but I don't want to pay for the project manager. How much of a discount are you going to give me? And the answer is no.
There is no discount.
Because we know that in the back end, it increases the odds that we're going to have to spend money on a warranty service call. I wanted to just clarify that too. The term quality control is commonly used. Everybody understands what quality control is. But project managers are another step called quality assurance. And the difference between quality control and quality assurance,
one's before,
one's after. Quality control is picking off the assembly line, picking the bad widget out of the assembly, but you already made the bad widget. We're trying to keep the leak from happening before it ever happens. So project managers assurance,
project
sales
managers,
reps control.
I mean, there's a little bit of both, I'd say, from the project manager. They're reading all the details of the job the night before to make sure they're familiar with your property. They're also talking to the crew in the morning to make sure they're all on the same page. That's a little bit of quality control, but mostly it's quality assurance. They're there throughout the entire process to make sure that it goes well. And, most of the time it does go well with us. Yeah.
Well, and if you ever use us, make sure that you request any. People love photos. I mean, it's cool to see a picture of your house from the air. So
we're happy to provide drone photos.
Gratis.
Yeah. We sent one to a customer a couple of minutes ago. So
right?
A whole zip file of every photo we took that day that they wanted. So
that's cool. Okay, so that's the big one for today. So another important question is, do you use real hip and ridge cap?
So first, let me start by explaining what hip and ridge cap are. If you have an asphalt shingle roof and you're getting it replaced, or you've seen your neighbors get it replaced, chances are they've gone back with what's called an architectural shingle, also referred to as laminate shingles. When you have a laminate shingle or an architectural shingle put on your house, there's supposed to be 3 different shingle components. There's a starter shingle, there's a field shingle, which is what most people think of when they think of a shingle.
It's what you see when you look at the house.
And then you've got the ridge cap shingles, which basically go on the very peaks of your roof. So what a lot of roofers will do, and unfortunately, there's no rules against this, they will take a 25-year shingle, which is a 3-tab, and they will cut that up and use that as ridge caps instead of a true ridge cap shingle, which is made to be more durable, more flexible. And what happens if you could drive around in your neighborhood right now and spot the roofs that have that. If it's 5 years old or older, and you can see at the very peaks, everything is slightly off color from the rest of the roof, that means that roofer used a 25-year 3-tab instead of a lifetime or a true hip and ridge cap. So it's a way and they're not cheap. It's a way for that roofer to save about $700 on the average roof by using a 3-tab as opposed to a true ridge cap. So if it's not on their estimate up front, that means they were going to try to sneak a 25-year shingle by you. Make sure that you see that line item on their quote, hip and ridge cap.
That is worth backtracking for. We've said it before. All roofers know the answer that you're looking for. So if they don't specify compatible hip and ridge, and you call them after they give you the bid, they're going to tell you what you want to hear, and they're just doing the calculation in their head, and they're saying, oh, doggone it, I'm going to make a little bit less money. But they weren't going to do it before you asked. So you've got to go by what's volunteered, not by the answer to the question. A little historical insight, tidbit I think is appropriate right here. You know,
I'm sorry. I do have to back. I'm sorry. I just have to backtrack a little bit on that.
okay.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
So you do want to ask them these questions, but I would say wait until you get their quote.
Right.
Wait until you get their quote.
Well,
and
I'm
then
saying,
you go
if
through
it's
and ask them
specified,
questions.
if it's specified already, you
don't
need
have to ask
it.
it.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
You need to ask if it's not there.
Yeah.
That's not just hip and ridge cap. Anything you want that they're not specifically stating, you have to ask. The classic one is, how many nails per shingle are you going to put in?
Mm-hmm.
They all know the answer to that question. Okay. But if it's not specified, maybe
Yeah.
they're going to do something different. They're just
Yeah.
going to take some shortcuts. But the historical tidbit, I think this is interesting. Back in the day, most roofs were 3-tab roofs. So just by force, the shingle that you were cutting up into hip and ridge cap was also the field shingle.
Yeah.
Well, what's happened is when they went to a better shingle, the laminated shingle, a lot of roofers were just in the habit of cutting up 3-tabs. There have been times way back in the late 70s, we actually had a lady that had a job, and all she did was cut hip and ridge cap for us out of 3-tab. That was her job. Her name was Patty. Now that was
What company was that?
that was Iowa TMT Roofing. That was
Iowa
the
TMT
that was the
Roofing.
that was the little tiny roofing company that I used when I was in college, and her name was Patty, and she had 2 jobs. She was great, but she'd start cutting cap in the morning, and then she'd get up there and she'd hold the other end of the chalk line when people snapped it. But she was good.
And if you want to know what a 3-tab is, you can look it up. But basically, it's just like the name. It's 3 tabs that you could flip up and down, and there's
Right.
basically 3 square tabs that are
Right.
next to each other.
But the point is, back in the day, the hips and the ridges and the field shingles were all the same warranty, all the same color. That's another thing. If you don't get compatible hip and ridge, there's going to be off on the color a little bit. If you drive through your neighborhood, you'll see up the hips. Hips are where roofs come together kind of sideways, not at the peak, but they're like a pyramid. If you think of a pyramid has 4 hips. When you look at those hip lines, if that's clearly a different color, that's not a design accent that was on purpose.
Yeah.
That was people bringing in the cheapy hip and ridge.
Yeah.
So again,
Thankfully, that's going to be harder and harder for roofers to do because they're only making, most of the big manufacturers are now only making 2 colors of 3 tabs. So I'd say there's going to be less of this just by sure accident, not because roofers are stepping their game up, but because of what the manufacturers are doing. But the true ridge cap, again, it's something that should be included if you get a lifetime roof.
A typical roof, just the average, let's say 4 windows on top, 4 windows below, a main door, your suburban 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. What's the difference in cost between compatible hip and ridge and 3 tabs?
Just a basic roof?
Yeah. You said it was expensive.
Yeah, I'd say,
Give us an order of magnitude. How expensive is expensive?
average roof,
Yeah.
$750.
You're spending $750 more to get
$500 to $750.
to get the right stuff.
To get the right stuff, yeah.
And then you don't invalidate your warranty because those 3 tabs are not the same warranty, right?
Exactly. Yeah. What you could do is you could have a lifetime field shingle and a 25-year ridge cap. And if you ever do, the wind warranties won't apply. And, the big thing with, especially like what we installed, GAF, it's got an unlimited wind rating. If a bunch of those ridge caps get ripped off in a storm and it's 25-year, that warranty is going to be null and void. So the color variation is a big deal. The longevity is a big deal, and the warranty is a big deal. So you don't want to have that shortcut taken on your roof. I'm going to get the next one.
And you don't want to learn the hard way.
No,
I've noticed too. One last thing.
No, we sell repairs all the time. I think probably once or twice a week we replace all the ridge caps on somebody's house because of this.
We're doing it today.
Are we doing it today?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I just want to say one other thing is those hip cap, those ridge cap are so skinny that where boards come together at a peak, create a gable, that's sharp at the top. And that sharp board over time will cut through that,
and you have
ridge
holes,
cap. Yeah, and then it attracts termites, carpenter ants,
leaks, everything.
And instead of finding out the hard way, just make a little investment in the right stuff ahead of time.
Absolutely.
Right? So we're going to flip the script, and you're going to ask me a question. Well, I hope I can handle this. Here we go.
Mr. Scribbins, are you using real starter shingles?
You can call me Tommy. Are Are we using?
I don't
real
see them on your quote.
That's just that's just an oversight. Here, let me fix that. Doggone it. Yes, we are using real starter shingles. Back in the day, what you would do with a shingle is just flip it upside down, and that would be your first row of shingles. And then when architectural shingles came along, it's the same thing. If you're using an upside down 3-tab shingle, you are not putting on a lifetime shingle as your first row of defense. And where two architectural shingles come together, there's got to be a crease there. There's got to be a line. There's got to be a way for water to get in. Well, what's underneath there keeping that water out is your starter shingle, and it's also the shingle that projects water over the edge into the gutter. So if that starter shingle is not compatible, not the same warranty length, you're getting an inferior product. The bigger issue, though, is when you flip a 3-tab shingle upside down, the factory applied adhesive is roughly at the halfway point. So that means before you
What's the factory applied adhesive? What are you talking about?
Factory applied adhesive is if you pick up any shingle, whether it's laminate, whether it's a 3-tab, you'll see these little dashed lines.
We call it a tar strip.
Tar strip.
Nowadays.
Well, yeah, but I call it what it's really called,
Right.
which is the factory applied adhesive, the tar strip.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between a boot and a flashing.
Yeah.
I'm a stickler for terminology, because if you ever have to call like the warranty department at a manufacturer, you need to speak the same language.
I think you use Yankee roof terminology.
All right. Well, Yankees hardly ever get callbacks. Yep. But anyway, the tar strip is 6 inches from the edge, which means when you put the first shingle down, that lip that's down on the bottom is not catching anything. It's because that tar strip melts underneath the shingle, bonds those two layers of shingle together, so it's impervious to wind. But if you have that tar strip 6 inches from the bottom, those shingles can flip up.
Yeah, the wind can get a lot of leverage.
The other thing is critters have all day to cause trouble. And then, like a squirrel will walk around back and forth on the gutter and nudge those up. So
that's not a huge extra expense either.
No, it's
I mean,
not.
that's something that every roofer should do. And for some reason, a lot of them still don't.
That's the number one thing that gets omitted, hoping that nobody will ask.
Yeah.
So make sure you ask, are you using real starter shingles? Starter shingles have the adhesive at the bottom, and they're the same service life rating as the rest of the roof. We're getting a signal from our
we are
producer.
Right at the time limit that we were shooting for. Next week, we are going to go over the next 3. Actually, no, we're going to do 2 next week and then 2 the week after. Yeah. And then after that, we're moving on to a new subject and should have a guest. I'm not going to announce who it is yet, but we do have a guest coming.
Well, I got to let a little bit of the toothpaste out of the tube. The next series is going to be on AI, and it is fascinating. Not just roofing, but AI in general. We're going to get downright philosophical, because the biggest philosophical discussions in the world are taking place.
I just got something yesterday.
It's crazy.
Well, Google just implemented a bunch of AI in their the way they're doing search SEO and a bunch of other things. They just announced it a couple of days ago. So
all right,
it's changing things big time.
We are overtime real quick. We would call this a hard break if we had sponsors. We have to go pay some bills. We need to make the world a better place before we leave. How are we going to make the world a better place in one simple move?
One simple move: listen to people and don't interrupt. Not always the easiest thing to do.
We couldn't even get through a podcast. And both of us were on each other. But you know what? And when you watch a marriage in particular, it looks like a good marriage. And you won't even know why. But that lady may have heard that story 50 times. But if she's standing there with her husband going like this while he's telling his story, it goes a long way. People love to be listened to all the way to the end.
I can take that one myself. I need to do better at that.
All right. Wish we had more time. I could tell you stories about that listening thing.
But I wanted to say, if anybody listens, they have any questions, please send those questions to contact at leaksmith.com.
Contact at leaksmith.com.
Yep. That's LEAKSMITH. Just like locksmith, except Leaksmith.
And don't forget to specify your preference between the snazzy cap or the t-shirt, the Leaksmith t-shirt.
Any questions that you send, we'll go over them. That could be a new thing we do in the
you
first
will
part
get
of the podcast. We'll address your questions.
You will get a response. And okay, so until our next exciting broadcast, remember, we are the Leaksmith, and we were roofing
when roofing wasn't cool.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate it.